Should the Dallas Cowboys make a move for Dalvin Cook if he's released? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cowboys. Locked On Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon, first Twitter question of the day. Should the Dallas Cowboys explore a Dalvin Cook trade or sign him when he's released?
I think a signing after a release makes some sense, or at least kicking the tires on that. I don't know if a trade does necessarily. I mean,
I agree. I think he has to be when he's cut, right?
Yeah, that money necessarily. I mean, the money is the reason he's being cut, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know necessarily. I'm looking to take on that contract as it stands right now. And honestly, to be straightforward with you, I don't even know what the contract is off the top of my head. But I'm not really willing to take on a veteran running back contract right now that is getting him cut from Minnesota. So I think if the Cowboys can have him cut and then renegotiate a deal that makes some sense, that will, economically set things up so you can still have room for Deuce Vaughn to kind of make to eat into some carries. If you start to get some positive play through training camp from him, that's something I think that's palatable. But if he's got some kind of big deal, which I'm sure you've got the numbers for by now, I don't know if it's worth it.
His base salary is $10.4 million.
Yeah, that's too much, right?
It's
for running back.
Oh,
yeah.
You're asking me like,
I'm just making sure you're okay with not paying $10 million for a running back.
I'm already paying one running back $10.9 million. I don't want to pay a second one $10.4 million. No, but if he's released, I think that's a different conversation because then you can structure it as a 1-year deal with probably the cap hit being pretty low, and then maybe you just tie a bunch of incentives in there to pay him. Let's say he does have a 1,400-yard year or whatever, and you want to pay him some money that way. I get it. I do think this does make some sense. Like if the Cowboys want to add in another veteran running back to pair with Tony Pollard and kind of keep Pollard in his role, I think Dalvin Cook makes a lot of sense for Dallas.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I think that there is, there's some unknown to despite what folks have been saying, there is some unknown to kind of starting out with Pollard being the kind of primary back. I mean, especially coming off an injury, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that, keeping him in a kind of similar, but maybe just, evolved role as to where he was previously, it makes a lot of sense. And having someone like Dalvin Cook, who is an experienced back, can do a little bit of everything well. It just kind of solidifies things as opposed to trying to cobble together a talented running back field with one guy who has some experience, a very good experience, but limited experience, and a couple of guys who have zero experience, basically.
So a couple things. So Dalvin Cook was in that 2017 draft that was loaded with running backs with Leonard Fournette, Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara. A lot of those guys are being cut outside of Christian McCaffrey, right? Like Kareem Hunt's on the market, Leonard Fournette's on the market. Do you think he makes more sense with Dallas than like a Leonard Fournette, who maybe has a little bit more power, can do some more stuff in the short yardage part?
Yeah, just because I think that he's a more talented back than Fournette is, especially at this point in his career. I just think that Fournette, the wheels came off of Fournette really quickly. He just did not have a good season last year. He just hasn't looked good running the football. I agree he has more power to him, and that kind of maybe is a fit for skill sets that are missing from the running back room a little bit. I
just wish he was better, right?
Yeah. I just wish he was a better football player. So I wish Dalvin Cook had more of that aspect to his game, right?
Well, I mean, Dalvin Cook is certainly more of the slashing running back. I don't think he has a ton of speed left.
No.
But he could still be really effective in some wide zone stuff, and he's a very capable receiver, and he's a good enough between the tackles runner that I think you could get him 200 touches, and you don't feel like there's a big drop-off between him and Tony Pollard. So I think Dalvin is going to get cut because I just don't see any way that Minnesota, with their cap situation, I mean, they can save $11 million if they cut him after June 1st. It just seems like that's pretty likely. Are the Cowboys interested in bringing him in, or would you rather just see what the young running backs have, including your fullback / running back? And
look, I mean, I think I'm always okay with waiting on running backs. I think Dalvin Cook may not be available when you start actually thinking that you might need a veteran running back, but I mean, that's the point of this, right? Is that all these middle tier of running backs are all, relatively speaking, the same. I think that you can get someone who could give you similar production, even if it's not as much of a big name or someone that is a household name like Cook is. So I think whether you could. There is some, yes, I think that signing a running back and getting him in here makes some sense, but doing so now doesn't necessarily make some sense. Let's see what they have in mini camp, maybe even some training camp. And if you don't like what you see, go and see if you can bring a guy in. But honestly, like adding a bunch of touches to a veteran running back in training camp is not something that I'm like rushing out to do.
No, because I want to see Malik Davis. I want to see Deuce Vaughn. I want to see our North Dakota State fullback play a little bit, right? Like those guys need the reps anyways. And the other thing,
let them fail. Let them fail.
Exactly.
Let them show that they can't do it, and then go get a guy.
The other thing that I'll say is you never know who's going to be available at the running back position 2 months from now. That is one of the few positions where the longer you wait, sometimes the options actually get better. Like, for example, Derrick Henry has a very movable contract, and we've already heard whispers that maybe the Titans would move on from him. Maybe somebody like James Conner, who is a good power back on a really bad team in Arizona, maybe he wants out. And maybe that's somebody that I could see you pairing Tony Pollard with because he is such a good inside runner. I think the Cowboys should just be patient here because options will still be on the table 2, 3, 4 months from now.
There are windows of opportunity for each one of these positions to get players added to it in free agency. The running back windows are plentiful. It's not even just one long window; it's multiple windows that'll happen. And the cut down day is running back is one of the very few positions that on cut down day you could get a legit starter for your team on cut down day from another team that may have youth talent. And running back is such a disposable position, salary cap wise, that you'll get still talented players that are just not worth the money of the contract that they originally signed,
or just aren't a good fit in their current situation. I'll give you a perfect example. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to get released from the Chiefs this offseason. They have Isaiah Pacheco. They brought back Jerick McKinnon. They drafted another running back. It seems like he just isn't a fit in Kansas City. I wouldn't be opposed to signing him if he's cut on cut down day and seeing, hey, if a change of scenery helps out. There's going to be situations like that or that come about. I mean, you mentioned it. Running back is the position where you're just going to get so many talented names available all at one time in early September.
So, and it's just take advantage of those windows. Take advantage of the fact that you can get that kind of talent later and see what you have in-house first and then go get what you need if you need it.
Absolutely. All right, let's get to some more questions next. Are you looking for a delicious snack but don't want all the sugar and the calories? Then you need to try the best tasting protein bar ever. It's Built. You've got to try it. If you're like me, you're trying to be a little bit healthier as you go into summer and you're trying to make some healthier snack choices, but you don't want to compromise on taste, well, we've got just a thing for you. It's Built Bars and Built Puffs. Built Bars are healthy and they taste amazing. Seriously, they taste so good that you're not even going to know that they're healthy. You've absolutely got to try this. What makes Built so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real dark chocolate. That's right, real dark chocolate. And they come in so many unbelievably great flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and cookies and cream. Not sure how Built does it because they only have 130 calories or only 4 grams of sugar and a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't even have to wait to get a box. We've been telling you for years to go to Built.com, place your orders over there, which you can still do if you want to load up on, one special flavor. But now if you live near a Walmart, just run into the pharmacy section, grab a 4-bar box of, the cookies and cream, the double chocolate, or the coconut puff. Or if you happen to live near a Sam's Club, like I do, run in and grab a 13-bar box with some of the hit flavors, including brownie batter puff and churro puff, and you can thank us later. Thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen of the day. Every day, we've got a busy show next week. Still a ton of Cowboy content as we kind of get into the summer. We've got a really cool guest from Pro Football Focus jumping on Wednesday. So make sure you guys tune in for that. Lana, let's get to some more questions. This one from at Chorizo Quarterback. He wants to know, which second-year player do you expect to make the biggest jump this season?
I mean, this is a total cop-out answer, but I think Tyler Smith. I mean,
that was going to be
look, he spent all off season, playing one position and then swapped to another position. But at the same time, what he ended up doing was getting a ton of experience. I mean, he played almost every snap on offense, I think, last year. So, I think that we've talked about this before. Guys that are usually make that kind of big leap are guys that kind of get their feet wet a little bit and some opportunity to see the speed of the NFL, and then go back and can kind of compare what they did on tape and just know, just with the knowledge of what it requires to play in this league. And I think for someone like Tyler Smith, that is certainly the case here. He's seen the speed of these pass rushers. He's seen the power of these defensive tackles. He knows what the requirements are. So he just can go back into the lab and work with Duke and kind of improve himself. And I just think that this is a guy that, I mean, honestly, I think I'm going to let you say some of the other guys, but I think there are a couple of different guys who, because of the experience they got on the field last season as rookies, that could be ready for some pretty big jumps coming year two.
So we've also seen, like, historically, or just even the last couple of years, that offensive tackles generally make a huge leap in year two. Look no further than Andrew Thomas, right? He was a disaster as a rookie for the Giants, but by year two, one of the best left tackles in the league. Same thing for Christian Darrisaw. Not great for Minnesota in year one, but year two, I think he gave up like 2 pressures a game all season long. I fully expect the same for Tyler Smith. I think he's going to take a big leap. The other one that I was going to mention, I think he's going to take a big leap because we literally didn't see him really at all last year. What about Matt Waletzko? Because
yeah, it's possible.
Waletzko is somebody who the Cowboys really liked, and he got hurt. Was it the first padded practice that the Cowboys had last year? He had a shoulder injury.
Yeah.
And I remember the news at the time from Michael Gelkin is, hey, he's got to have season-ending shoulder surgery at some point. He's going to try to play through it. He did, right? He played through the preseason. He even was on the active roster and played a game for them before he had to go get surgery. But you just wonder, making that jump from North Dakota, not North Dakota State, that's the powerhouse, North Dakota to the NFL. Now he's healthy. He had a full year in the weight room. I expect him to be somebody that looks dramatically different here in year two.
Yeah, and that's actually a good example of a guy that didn't get, the kind of experience, but simply because of the change in surroundings. Yep. That you expect some improvement. I mean, not again, no one's sliding North Dakota, but North Dakota is obviously not the Dallas Cowboys, and so he has opportunities and resources that he didn't have at North Dakota. Can I throw out another name real quick?
Yeah, sure. Really quickly, one more thing on Waletzko.
Yeah, please.
Also, the situation changed a little bit. Like last year, he was competing with Josh Ball for like the third or fourth tackle spot. Josh Ball's not playing tackle anymore, right? So like it's clear to me that the Cowboys want Matt Waletzko to be the swing tackle, right? It seems like they've opened up all the doors. Now it's just his opportunity to go take it. But please go ahead.
Yeah, I'll add one more thing there is that I think it gives them a nice backup that they have Tyler Smith, being able to kick out and play tackle if that is needed. And then they can take the risk of, hey, let's go all the runway he needs to try to take that swing tackle job. We have to mention Sam Williams and Deron Bland. I mean, they played a lot of snaps last year on the field, and obviously as rookies surprised us with how well they played. I think both players are. I mean, obviously Bland is basically in line to be a starter almost next year. And I would not be shocked if Sam Williams played so well that he made us think twice about who should be starting between him and DeMarcus Lawrence next year.
Ooh, that's a spicy Friday take.
Well, it's Friday. I'm a fan. So
but we saw this last year, right? Like the biggest I don't even know if it was not, but like we're worried about Sam Williams as a run defender right away because in the SEC he had a ton of sack production, but played in that frog stance kind of as like a almost like a 4-eye for Ole Miss. And then he wasn't perfect as a run defender, but he made quite a few splash plays. And now you just wonder, like, if Dan Quinn can trust him on rundowns, you're just going to see his snaps like double right away.
His pressure rate was just insane for how little he was on the field. I mean, he just was able to generate pressure in a rotational role, which, I mean, frankly, I think that's really hard to do. Like, to not get a ton of snaps and still manage to generate pressures, like you're performing at a high level there. And the fact that he's a rookie doing that, that bodes well for his future.
I'll be curious to see if he outsnaps Dorrance Armstrong, right? Because Dorrance Armstrong, more of a veteran player going into the final year of his contract. Did we start to see maybe Sam Williams start to play more snaps and kind of ease Dorrance into that fourth defensive end role? If that's the case, then I think Sam Williams could have a huge breakout year.
Absolutely.
All right, let's get to another question. We got so many good ones. All right, this question right here. What kind of impact do you expect Deuce Vaughn to have in year one?
Well, I think it's a range of outcomes we should talk about, right? I think, obviously there's the opportunity that he, just doesn't make the team, it doesn't work. It's just not, it's not something that he could fit. They find some other talented, right? He's too small, whatever. But I think that the likely range of outcomes is that he starts out as kind of a gadget player for them. I mean, it's like a third running back that they, have packages for. They'll probably run some jet sweep stuff for him. Maybe even specifically have some plays that they run out there for him, like some screens or things like that. And then, as the season goes on, I think you start to see him kind of take on a little bit more of the carries. I think likely what happens is that you go into training camp, you see exactly what you've got in this kid. You look at the running game overall, and then you decide, do we need to or want to put the kind of load that we're going to need to put on Deuce Vaughn in order to facilitate all the carries that this team is going to have with Pollard? Is Pollard and Vaughn and maybe like a third guy that's in that group enough to do that? Or do we need a veteran guy as well? And if they bring in a veteran guy, then I would say look for Pollard and the veteran guy to kind of, have a similar sort of role as Zeke and Pollard did last year, maybe with Pollard getting more touches than he did last year in the percentage wise, and then mixing in Vaughn as a percentage of those, what we would call Zeke carries before, right? Like, or I mean, whether you want to call them Pollard carries because they're, specialty touches, that's fine. But I think what you will see is Pollard will have Zeke's carries last year, and then Pollard's carries from last year will be split between whatever veteran the Cowboys sign, and then Deuce Vaughn and some to Malik Davis and some to Lipke and all that.
I also won't be surprised if Deuce Vaughn is kind of that guy that so I think what's the rules now that you can have two guys from your practice squad go up and down on the roster without being subject to waivers. Maybe he's that guy, just depending on the weeks he's active and he has a role in offense. And then other games he's on the practice squad and you don't bring him up, right? If you need more special teamers that week, or you feel like you need to have another defensive tackle active that week, I won't be surprised if that's ultimately what ends up happening. And I hope this doesn't happen, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Cowboys kind of use maybe his ties and the loyalty to the franchise against him a little bit. Like, hey, you're going to be on the practice squad, but we know that you want to be here. So don't go jump at the first opportunity to join somebody else's 53. We've got a plan for you. Just be patient.
Yeah. I mean, that's what they hope. We'll see.
Yeah.
And listen, I don't think it's necessarily wrong, because the truth of the matter is that the Cowboys themselves probably have some loyalty to Vaughn above what they normally would a fifth round running back. So that's probably a two-way street there a little bit.
All right, let's do one more question before we head out into that one next. All right, Landon, our final question here from @Dr_Cowboys. He wants to know, who would you be more disappointing in having a fall off the face of the earth type of season from the Cowboys' two veteran additions, Stephon Gilmore or Brandon Cook? So basically, of those two players, which one could you just not see being bad this year?
I mean, they're both older players, so it's certainly possible for either one of them. I would be more shocked if it was Gilmore, I think, right?
Just because his game isn't based solely off speed and athleticism, right?
That's right. Yeah. So I think that the physical drop off would be less affecting to his game as it would for Cooks. But I'm not necessarily concerned that Cooks' game is going to fall off physically just because we've seen it very recently. And I think he's still very fast.
Let me ask you this. Which one do they need to be good this year more, Gilmore or Cooks? Because I think it's Cooks. Because if Cooks isn't good and it's clear that he's lost a step or two, then you're right back to having the same weapons you had last year, just minus Dalton Schultz. And that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, and replacing Cooks will be harder now than Gilmore, because at least with Gilmore you can be like, okay, well, we can Bland, you can take his spot. We'll keep Jordan Lewis this year as opposed to whatever potential move off plans we have, and then you hope that either Joseph or Wright takes a step, or sign a veteran, sign a Kella Weatherspoon who just got cut or something as your fourth corner. I think it's just an easier solve because you can bump some folks up, whereas if Cooks gets hurt, now you're relying that you have to hope that Gallup gets healthy. You have to hope that Tolbert is taking a step, or Fajoku is taking a step. You have to hope that there's a veteran guy that you could sign as your wide receiver 3. I just think it's a lot more dominoes that have to fall to fix that situation with Cooks than with Gilmore.
Well, the other thing is it's a lot easier to replace a corner in season than a wide receiver, right? Because a wide receiver, they got to learn the offense. They got to learn the, timing with Dak Prescott and all that kind of stuff. With a corner, you can kind of just say, hey,
go play man coverage.
Go play man coverage, right? Like, we'll help you kind of learn everything else, but just go cover this one guy. So I agree. I think Cooks is going to be a huge part, whether they're successful or not, really, this year. If he's great and he's everything that we've hoped for, Cowboys offense should be absolutely elite. This season. If not, they might struggle to be kind of consistent week to week. And when they get into those bigger games against better defenses, it could be some of the same issues we saw last year.
Yeah, and that's not to say that like the Cowboys couldn't sustain an injury to Cooks at some point and get by for a couple games. I think we're just talking about the long-term viability of this offense.
Yeah. All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you guys for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every day. Again, every day we got a busy show lined up next week. Again, we have Trevor Sikkema from Pro Football Focus coming up on Wednesday. Be sure to tune in for that. You can follow the show on YouTube. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Enjoy your weekend. We'll see you right back here on Monday.